The first crack sounded as a snicker, subtle, faint enough to doubt if I'd really heard it, but it spread, rolling over the white-walled studio like a slow, cruel wave. I stood in the makeshift circle, holding my largest piece up for the class. Project lines and color-coded probability clouds arced over Madrid's neighborhoods, alive on canvas. The colors vibrated. I thought I saw it breathe. But to the others, my would-be colleagues, my professors, my mother perched on a folding chair by the door, it must have looked like a board game from another planet. Let's start with interpretations, Professor Costa suggested, voice too slick, expression unreadable. Francisco raised his hand, tried for gentle but fell wide of the mark. Is this an infographic? Laughter choked half the room. I tried to explain the layering, a year of traffic data, air samples, human migration along bus lines. How, when you stepped back, the shapes reflected the pulsing heart of the city. My voice grew small, words crumbling before the eyes that dropped, the mouths that curled. A girl in a red scarf whispered, "Why can't you just paint?" "Where's the soul in numbers?" someone added. Mom didn't speak, fingers tight on her bag. She wore mascara for me. At the end, after the others had snapped selfies beside the more traditional oil portraits, Professor Costa sighed, put a hand on my shoulder and said, "Christina, sometimes an idea belongs more in theory than in practice." Later alone, I drifted around the near-empty studio. The city beyond the windows was grey, autumn wind carrying the day away. I thought maybe I am wrong, about art, about what people want, about myself. The humiliation from that afternoon soaked into my skin like sour milk. At family dinner that weekend, my cousin Julio joked that I was academic until proven useful, and toast crumbs sprinkled the table with laughter. I tried to smile. Mom asked if I'd looked into civil service tests. Maybe, she said, I could help people not just invent data rainbows. That phrase, data rainbows, stuck. It prickled under my bones. I spent nights in my cramped room laying shapes on paper, coaxing connections out of dull numbers. Patterns curled behind my eyes every time I blinked, but every time I brought out a new draft, my sisters rolled their eyes. "Christina, when will you try something normal?" they'd ask, voice soft, but the word normal twisted. My father stopped including me in his long rants about art history, as if I'd failed some test I never remembered being given. Still, I couldn't stop. After graduation, while my classmates slipped into gallery apprenticeships or design studios, I worked at a coffee shop in Malasaña, stealing hours before shifts. Eventually, the whispers turned blunt. "A barista with a master's," my uncle joked one Christmas, clapping me too hard on the back. My mother grew quieter each month. I sent my portfolio to local galleries, curators, even the city council's innovation department. Silence. I flinched at the sight of my email. Then one morning I woke to a reply subject line. "Interested, Galleria Luisa." I'd heard of Luisa only in passing, a new modern space near Retiro known for strange installations, conceptual pieces. The director, Ana Núñez, wanted to see more. She understood, she said, what I meant by the pulse of numbers. She saw Madrid in the clouds of digital color. Hope returned fractured. I packed my best pieces into a battered leather folder and took the metro to the gallery. Inside, the floors gleamed. Anna wore thick black glasses and a look of permanent, skeptical amusement that reminded me too much of Professor Costa, but she nodded slowly as I explained, pushing pieces into the light, describing my vision of city intimacy through statistical ghosts. She seemed to listen with her whole face. It took months, but eventually Anna gave me a corner in a shared show, small, unassuming, my works hung beside video loops and melted street signs. A critic from a local blog wrote, "Madrid's data rendered poetic." A strange, irresistible gravity. My cheeks burned reading that. It was the first kind thing anyone outside my head had said about my work in years, but outside that quiet, strange corner, nothing changed. My family still called my job the coffee shop thing. Julio asked me at Easter if I sold out to Google yet. Mom started urging me to apply for teaching certifications. There were days when I nearly gave in. One real job, one steady paycheck, and no one would ask me about my exhibitions again. Safety, normalcy, the words had an allure, but they felt tight, like trying to breathe through a straw. Instead, I doubled down. I started coding at night, learning how to scrape public datasets and twist them into visual forms. My shows grew more complex. One mapped the city's sleep cycles, another charted the way phone signals pulse through Gran Via at night, words flickering in time with the tides of daily life. My art never sold much. Some installations paid a stipend, a few pieces bought by odd, wealthy collectors who enjoyed the novelty. Mostly, I lived on barista wages and the stubborn belief that someone somewhere would someday take my work seriously. Every rejection still hurt, but each new project was a salve. It felt like I aged a decade in those 3 years. Then, out of nowhere, everything shifted. The City Council announced an international open call seeking artists to create a data-driven mural for the new Science Centre, built on the bones of a ruined 1980s sports hall by the river. The theme, Madrid in Motions. I submitted my proposal on a whim, an interactive mural, digital and physical, mapping the emotional rhythms of the city. I drew on public posts, street soundscapes, anonymous census strings, turning them into a swirling cascade of visuals projected against living, shifting canvases. I included a short manifesto, art is memory, data is truth, a city is made of both. Weeks later, Anna called me at the coffee shop. I still remember her words, Christina, the jury wants to meet you. Pack everything, sketches, prototypes, they want to see how you think. I nearly dropped a tray of coffees. I trembled all the way back to my room and sat for an hour on the edge of the bed, watching the lamplight flicker over old canvases. The interview was a blur, city officials, foreign curators, even a German artist in flashy green boots. I showed them my code, sketches, even raw data. Unlike the studio critique years before, no one laughed. Several asked questions. For the first time, my weird obsession, my need to see art and life as numbers and shapes, was treated as something deliberate. They chose me. Anna called to tell me. I laughed, but the sound came out raw, scraped thin with disbelief. For months, I lived half in a trance, waking before dawn, working long after midnight, scrambling up scaffolding in cheap denim, painting and wiring, weaving LED threads, programming the mural's nervous system. And finally, it was finished, 20 meters wide, a swirling mural reflecting daily flows of the city's heart rate, color-changing with real-time data. It pulsed brighter when the markets opened, dimmed at sunset, echoed the patterns of Madrid without words. There was a gala for the opening, media, politicians, the art world elite. Galleria Luisa insisted I invite family. I hesitated, but Anna pressed. Bring them, she said. They need to see. My family came together, gusset up and tense, shuffling through the echoing gallery lobby. Giulio inched ahead with curiosity. My sisters hung back, nervous but trying to hide it. Mom wore her best coat, mouth a thin line. We entered the great projection hall. The crowd was thick, all murmurs and clinking glasses. The mayor spoke briefly, and Anna introduced me as one of the youngest artists ever chosen for a municipal commission. I could see friends from the past, even Professor Costa in the crowd, his frown deep and unfamiliar. Then the lights went low. I stepped up, legs wobbling. I breathed, counted down and pressed the remote. The mural woke. Luminous rivers unfurled across the wall, threading Madrid's neighborhoods in digital blues and burning reds. Data shimmered like jewels, mapping pulses and footsteps and nighttime hush. For a moment there was only light movement, the soft, audible gasp of the crowd as the city's own voice ran through the heart of the old sports hall. Next to me, Giulio muttered, Madre de Dios, his voice faint, awed. My sisters fumbled for their phones. I heard someone else, an acquaintance, a forgotten classmate, whisper she did this. After, as the applause settled in, the mayor shook my hand and the press angled for shots. My mother's arms were rigid, but her face she cried in silence, wiping away tears as if ashamed to show them. She hugged me, wordless. Her disbelief was soft and shivering. It carried old grief, old regret, and brittle pride. Costa came over, shaking his head. I never saw it coming, he admitted, strange gentleness in his eyes. But you pushed through, didn't you? I nodded, speaking was too hard. The lights on the mural kept shifting, echoing snippets of midday laughter, honking horns, secrets whispered and lost in Madrid's ancient streets. The city on the wall was mine, the city that hadn't believed in me, the city I'd loved enough to capture in colors, data, and unspoken hope. Family friends approached, apologetic, their jokes gone brittle. We never thought, they stammered, and I kept smiling, floating above embarrassment, too exhausted to gloat. Their old laughter had been a fortress. Seeing it gone was simple relief and quiet sadness. After the crowd thinned, my family lingered beneath the mural. Mom finally found her words. I didn't understand, Christina, she whispered, but I'm proud. Her hands trembled in mine. Giulio snapped a photo with me by the mural, trying to look stern but finally grinning. I caught a glimpse of myself reflected in the lacquered floor, older, certainly, worn, but not broken, not lost. We walked home together slowly, cutting through the park. Madrid at night was cool and brilliant, leaves shivering in the lamplight, the seamless hum of late-night buses, lovers arguing softly a street away. For the first time in years, I simply let myself walk, listening to their voices, their small talk. No one mocked me. They asked questions about the mural, about how I'd collected the city's heartbeat. Back at the apartment block, my mother patted my arms. Will you stay a while? The question wasn't about geography. I smiled. Yes, Mama, I think I will. Doors closed softly behind us, and for a long time I just watched the electric city lights through my window, content, bone-tired and unafraid. In the quiet, there was no triumphant parade, no revenge, no fireworks. Just this, the city outside changed not at all, and yet somehow for me changed completely.